Welcome to A Cup of History, a podcast where we explore key events and figures from world history. I'm Chris, your host, and together with our experts Jesse and Emily, we'll make world history easy to understand and engaging for everyone. Hi everyone. Today, we're diving into a topic I've been hearing a lot about but don't fully understand: the French Revolution. I know it was important, but when did it happen? And what was it all about?
Of course, Chris. The French Revolution was a major event in world history. It started in 1789 and lasted until 1799. It was a period of radical social and political upheaval in France.
That's right. It began because the French people were unhappy with the monarchy. The country was in financial crisis, and there were growing calls for equality and representation.
So it wasn't just about overthrowing the king?
No, it was much more than that. It was about changing the whole system of government. The French wanted to move away from absolute monarchy and towards a more democratic system.
Exactly. It all started when King Louis XVI called the Estates General in 1789 to address the financial crisis. But the Third Estate, which represented the common people, used this opportunity to demand more political power.
Estates General? What's that?
Good question. The Estates General was an assembly representing three groups: the clergy, the First Estate; the nobility, the Second Estate; and the common people, the Third Estate. But the Third Estate, which made up most of the population, had the least power.
And that's where the problem lay. The Third Estate wanted equal representation and the chance to have a say in government. When the king refused, they broke away and formed the National Assembly.
So that's when things really started to heat up?
Exactly. The National Assembly began passing reforms, but the situation quickly escalated. In July 1789, the people of Paris stormed the Bastille, a fortress prison, which was a major turning point.
I've heard about the Bastille. What made that event so important?
The storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, became a symbol of the revolution. It was a direct attack on royal authority, and it showed that the people were willing to fight for change.
From that moment on, the revolution gained momentum. The National Assembly continued passing reforms, including the abolition of feudal privileges and the adoption of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen.
The Declaration of the Rights of Man? That sounds familiar.
It should. It's one of the most important documents from the revolution. It stated that all men are born free and equal in rights, and it laid the foundation for modern human rights.
Wow, so the revolution wasn't just about France. It had global significance.
Exactly. The ideas from the French Revolution inspired other movements around the world, like in Latin America and Europe.
So when did the revolution end?
Well, the revolution technically ended in 1799, but the changes it brought continued to shape France and the world for years to come.
Right. And the revolution went through many phases, including the rise of the radical Jacobins and the Reign of Terror, which we'll talk about in later episodes.
Sounds like there's a lot more to cover. I had no idea the French Revolution was so complex.
Definitely. It's one of the most important events in world history, and it's much more than just the fall of the monarchy.
We'll dive deeper into the different phases of the revolution in the next episodes, so stay tuned.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Jesse and Emily.
Anytime, Chris.
See you next time.
Welcome back to A Cup of History. Last time, we got introduced to the French Revolution, but today, we're diving into what actually caused it. Why did this huge movement start in the first place?
Great question, Chris. The French Revolution didn't just happen overnight. It was the result of a combination of social, political, and economic issues that had been building up for years.
That's right. France at the time was divided into three estates: the clergy, the nobility, and the common people, also known as the Third Estate. Authority. The Third Estate made up the vast majority of the population, but had the least power.
So the common people didn't really have a voice, right?
Exactly. The system was unfair, and the Third Estate was tired of paying heavy taxes while the clergy and nobility paid very little. The country was in serious financial trouble, largely due to its involvement in expensive wars like the American Revolution.
And to add to that, King Louis XVI wasn't handling the crisis well. The government was nearly bankrupt, and instead of taxing the wealthy, the burden was placed on the common people, making them even more angry.
So, the common people were shouldering all the taxes, while the rich weren't paying their share? That's rough.
Exactly. And this unequal system was one of the driving factors behind the revolution. But there was also another important influence, the Enlightenment.
Yes, Enlightenment thinkers like Rousseau and Voltaire were promoting ideas of liberty, equality, and democracy. They argued that people should have a say in their government, and that everyone should be treated equally.
So these new ideas about freedom were spreading too.
Absolutely. And these ideas were especially appealing to the common people who were tired of being oppressed. In 1789, when King Louis XVI called the Estates General to help solve the financial crisis, the Third Estate saw it as their chance to demand more political power.
The Estates General was an assembly that represented the three estates, but as we mentioned earlier, the Third Estate had little power. When they realized they wouldn't get fair representation, they broke away and formed the National Assembly.
And this is when things started to really heat up.
Exactly. The National Assembly began making reforms, but the tension in the country kept rising. Then in July 1789, the people of Paris stormed the Bastille, which was a fortress prison and a symbol of royal tyranny.
I remember you mentioning the Bastille before. Why was it so important?
The storming of the Bastille was a major turning point. It showed that the people were willing to take direct action against the monarchy. Even though the Bastille only had a few prisoners at the time, its fall symbolized the collapse of royal authority.
From there, the revolution really picked up speed. The National Assembly abolished feudalism and passed the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, which declared that all men are born free and equal in rights.
That sounds like a huge step toward democracy.
It was. The Declaration was a revolutionary document, and it inspired similar movements around the world. But the French Revolution was far from over at this point. The country was heading toward more radical and violent times.
So, things didn't calm down after those changes?
No, not at all. In fact, the revolution became even more intense with the rise of radical groups and the fall of the monarchy. We'll be getting into that in the next episode.
Wow, I didn't realize there was so much more to the story. I'm looking forward to hearing about what happens next.
There's a lot more to cover, Chris. We'll be diving into the Reign of Terror and the fall of Louis XVI next time.
Thanks, Jesse and Emily. This is really helping me understand the bigger picture.
Glad to help, Chris.
See you next time for more on the French Revolution.